Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her royal family. Today we bring you some significant news: Prince William in tears over the shocking manipulation of his mother before her death revealed. An insider source said that Prince William had profound sadness upon discovering Princess Diana's true feelings before her death after seeing a confidential document about the roles of monarchs chosen by King Charles amid his health issues. The revelation has profoundly astonished Prince William. This movie will explore the reasons for Prince William's grief at his mother's suffering prior to her death. The controversial scheme to manipulate Princess Diana. In a recent poignant admission, Prince William disclosed alarming details about the controversial scheme to manipulate his late mother, Princess Diana, after her divorce from King Charles in 1996. This startling account reveals the extent of manipulation and monitoring used by the royal family, as well as the significant effect it had on Diana's life and legacy. Subsequent to the divorce, Princess Diana ascended as a formidable humanitarian, embodying her newfound autonomy with poise and resolve. Freed from the obligations of royal responsibilities, she devoted herself to causes that aligned with her empathetic nature, including AIDS awareness and landmine eradication. Her honesty and sincere rapport with the audience elevated her to the status of a worldwide icon, cherished for her warmth and sensitivity. This change encountered hurdles. As Princess Diana's influence increased, the royal family's discomfort with her burgeoning independence also intensified. They saw her as a possible threat to their meticulously crafted image, which had been entrenched in tradition and formality for an extended period. The pronounced disparity between her dynamic, accessible character and the monarchy's stringent demands grew more evident, leading the royal family to implement more assertive strategies to regulate her public image. The scrutiny of her actions escalated as palace officials and security personnel diligently observed her every move in both public and private settings. This persistent surveillance was not just aimed at safeguarding her, but rather was a strategic endeavor to suppress her autonomy and control her public perception. The ramifications of this control were extensive, influencing not just Diana's personal life, but also her capacity to advocate for the issues she supported. The royal family endeavored to restrict her autonomy, often denying her the liberty to make selections about her personal life, including her relationships and philanthropic activities. This manipulation included her income, access to knowledge, and emotional well-being as the family endeavored to exert control over her life. The emotional burden of these constraints was profound, resulting in emotions of loneliness and despair that would eventually influence her disastrous trajectory. In contemplating these findings, Prince William both commemorates his mother's legacy and faces the harsh truth of the system that endeavored to dominate her. This account highlights the intricacies of the royal family's relationships and the lasting effects of their acts on a historically cherished individual. The controversial scheme to manipulate Princess Diana exposes a more sinister aspect of the monarchy, which starkly contrasts with the institution's cultivated image of elegance and honor. The monitoring of Princess Diana. The magnitude of Princess Diana's monitoring was unparalleled beyond typical security protocols for a former royal. Upon her accession to the royal family, her every action was scrupulously monitored, not alone for her safeguarding, but also as a method of regulation. Following her divorce from King Charles, the scrutiny not only persisted, but escalated. Palace authorities and security personnel exercised continuous surveillance, guaranteeing her adherence to the parameters of acceptable public conduct. Princess Diana was never really alone, whether participating in philanthropic activities, traveling internationally, or engaging in her personal life. Her security detail pursued her incessantly, and stories indicate that members of the royal family directly participated in surveilling her actions covertly. This monitoring transcended simple physical observation. Princess Diana's travel was meticulously controlled, requiring prior authorization from the palace for each journey. Her personal trips were subject to scrutiny, restricting her freedom of movement without royal authorization. During her overseas humanitarian missions, her schedule was often determined by palace authorities, guaranteeing that her public engagements conformed to the monarchy's objectives. The continuous presence of security officers and palace officials rendered her ability to participate in spontaneous or autonomous encounters practically impossible, so strengthening the perception that she remained under the royal family's dominion. The incessant surveillance fostered an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust, making Princess Diana well aware that her activities were always observed and evaluated. This incessant monitoring not only curtailed her autonomy, but also functioned as a psychological instrument to remind her of her connection to the monarchy, despite her attempts to carve her own trajectory. Restricting Princess Diana's autonomy. Princess Diana's independence was significantly restricted since the royal family exercised authority over almost all facets of her existence. Upon her marriage to Prince Charles, her personal decisions were governed by royal norms, significantly restricting her self-expression. Her clothes, public engagements, and charitable affiliations were all contingent upon royal endorsement. This inflexible framework persisted beyond her marriage, continuing to influence her life, even post-divorce. Notwithstanding her increased autonomy, the monarchy retained a strong influence over her choices, guaranteeing compliance with their expectations. A prominent illustration of this control was the limitation imposed on her relationships. Although Princess Diana enjoyed socializing the royal family, meticulously scrutinized her engagements, especially with prominent people. Upon commencing her relationship with Dodi Fayed in the summer of 1997, the palace allegedly sought to interfere, apprehensive about the ramifications of her association with a foreign entrepreneur. The extensive public monitoring of her personal life exacerbated the strain, making it practically difficult for her to manage relationships without external involvement. In addition to her personal life, Princess Diana had constraints in her philanthropic endeavors. The royal family meticulously regulated her participation in many causes, allowing her support, but guaranteeing adherence to acceptable limits. Her fervent campaigning for landmine eradication and AIDS awareness encountered opposition as the monarchy sought to preserve a more conventional and politically neutral public persona. These limits not only inhibited her capacity to fully connect with her convictions, but also perpetuated the notion that she remained under the monarchy's control despite her efforts to establish her own identity. Limiting access to information. A particularly devious tactic used to manipulate Princess Diana was the intentional limitation of her access to information. The royal family maintained her ignorance on significant issues that directly impacted her life, including choices about her children, financial difficulties, and her public appearances. This lack of openness was not just a bureaucratic error, but a deliberate tactic to maintain her dependency and hinder her ability to make educated choices. Deprived of comprehensive insight, Princess Diana often had to depend on hearsay or make decisions based on partial understanding, leaving her susceptible to exploitation. The lack of crucial information on her boys William and Harry was especially troubling. Although she was profoundly committed to her children, the palace meticulously regulated the dissemination of information pertaining to their upbringing, education, and welfare. Reports indicate that she was often marginalized in significant choices about their life, exacerbating her feelings of powerlessness. This information blackout also included her financial affairs. Despite her international renown and prominence as one of the most recognized individuals globally, Princess Diana was not granted complete authority over her funds. The palace administered her finances and prescribed her expenditure, constraining her autonomy. The psychological burden of this information regulation was substantial. Being uninformed about her own life engendered a terrible feeling of impotence, making it more challenging for her to establish her autonomy. The perpetual uncertainty fostered worry and dissatisfaction, solidifying the royal family's dominance over her. By limiting her access to crucial information, they guaranteed her reliance on their direction, so deepening her dependency on the system that aimed to dominate her. Media manipulation and public perception. The media significantly influenced the royal family's attempts to manage Princess Diana's public persona. Although the press had always been a fundamental aspect of royal existence, Princess Diana's allure and forthright demeanor made her an exceptionally captivating individual, one that the monarchy found difficult to regulate. The palace and its associates purportedly used the media as an instrument to manipulate public opinion, often twisting tales to conform to their preferred image. When Princess Diana diverged from conventional royal norms, be it via her emotional transparency, sartorial choices, or personal affiliations, influential individuals allegedly coordinated media strategies to undermine her reputation. These attempts aimed to depict her as unstable, chaotic, or too emotional, so supporting the notion that she required control. Media manipulation manifested in several ways, including selective leaks and meticulously crafted narratives that portrayed Princess Diana unfavorably. Journalists closely associated with the palace were purportedly sent material designed to depict her negatively, often accentuating her personal difficulties while minimizing her humanitarian contributions. This was especially apparent following her divorce from King Charles, when the monarchy sought to redirect popular sympathy towards him. Charles's adultery and contentious conduct were often minimized, but Princess Diana was often portrayed as the emotional and erratic individual, despite her attempts to maintain dignity and grace during adversity. The influence of this media manipulation was significant. The relentless scrutiny and adverse representations adversely affected Princess Diana's mental health, bolstering the royal family's assertion that she was incapable of functioning autonomously. Through press manipulation, the monarchy guaranteed that Princess Diana was perpetually subjected to public examination while also eroding her reputation. This cycle of manipulation not only influenced public perception, but also intensified the pressure she encountered, rendering it more difficult for her to express her own voice in a world that aimed to define her according to its own criteria. Separation from friends and family. The royal family deliberately isolated Princess Diana from her loved ones to undermine her support system and strengthen their control over her life. Although she was often accompanied by staff security and aides, many of these persons were devoted to the monarchy rather than to her personally. This indicated that when Princess Diana needed emotional support or trusted confidants, she often felt alone. The royal family allegedly limited her access to intimate friends and relatives, especially during her most vulnerable periods. This seclusion was intentional. It was a calculated strategy to guarantee that she had no one to consult who might provide an independent viewpoint or motivate her to question the system that aimed to dominate her. The seclusion significantly estranged Princess Diana from her family. Notwithstanding her profound connection with her boys, William and Harry, stories suggest that the palace meticulously regulated her engagements with them. She had occasions when her visitation with her children was restricted, and during the times she was permitted to see them, her interactions were regularly supervised. This limitation also applied to her connection with her sisters, especially her younger sister, Sarah McCorquodale, who was often distanced. Even her most intimate associates, such as James Hewitt and Dodi Fayed, faced examination as the royal family allegedly used media manipulation to undermine these connections and further alienate her. The psychological ramifications of this solitude were profound. In the absence of a robust support network, Princess Diana experienced isolation and emotional turmoil. The royal family's attempts to isolate her from her supporters exacerbated her feelings of powerlessness, further hindering her ability to establish her independence. Regulating Princess Diana's financial affairs. The royal family maintained significant influence over Princess Diana, mostly via her wealth. Despite her international renown and significant public fascination with her life, she lacked complete control over her finances. The palace meticulously controlled her financial matters, guaranteeing her reliance on the monarchy's consent for significant actions. This financial management was not only about managing her fortune, it was a calculated effort to curtail her freedom and bolster the royal family's dominion over her existence. Princess Diana had challenges in making autonomous decisions on her personal life philanthropic endeavors and the welfare of her boys due to limited access to her assets. The royal family allegedly controlled Princess Diana's financial decisions, often necessitating her to get authorization for significant purchases. Although she received a substantial allowance, it was meticulously regulated, and she was prohibited from making significant financial choices without royal approval. This included limitations on real estate acquisitions, travel expenditures, and her philanthropic donations. The palace ensured her financial resources were distributed in accordance with their interests, therefore restricting her capacity to support causes that may undermine the monarchy's public image. Moreover, she was prohibited from participating in commercial endorsements or business endeavors without royal consent, so further limiting her financial autonomy. The influence of this financial regulation was substantial. It not only constrained Princess Diana's freedom, but also reinforced the perception of her continued subjugation to the monarchy's power. By managing her funds, the royal family guaranteed that she could not easily liberate herself from their influence, complicating her efforts to lead a life wholly independent of the royal structure. This financial reliance served as a potent mechanism for sustaining control over her, guaranteeing that even after her divorce, she remained bound to the institution that aimed to delineate and govern her life. Limiting Princess Diana's travel. The royal family tried to regulate Princess Diana's capacity for unrestricted travel, which was a significant facet of her existence. Although she was often seen participating in prominent charity events and on humanitarian missions globally, the truth was that her travel was significantly constrained and needed royal authorization. All journeys, whether for professional or personal purposes, required royal approval, therefore assuring her continued subjugation to their authority even when she seemed to operate autonomously. The royal family controlled her trip destinations, companions, and duration of stay, so limiting her capacity to see the globe independently. The limitations on her travel went beyond simple logistical management. They were a calculated attempt to diminish her autonomy and confine her within the parameters of royal expectations. During her charitable endeavors, including her notable trip to Angola to promote awareness of landmines, the palace influenced the narrative and ensured her activities were consistent with their objectives. Although she was permitted to participate in philanthropic endeavors, the monarchy meticulously chose the causes she could endorse, so restricting her from entering politically sensitive or contentious domains that may jeopardize their meticulously crafted public image. These travel restrictions not only curtailed Princess Diana's capacity to engage with the world autonomously, but also reinforced the perception of her subjugation to the monarchy's authority. By meticulously controlling her actions, the royal family guaranteed that she could not entirely escape their influence, preserving their dominance over her life even after her divorce. The persistent surveillance and limitations on her travel made it more difficult for her to establish her autonomy, therefore deepening her reliance on the exact system she aimed to escape. Surveillance of Princess Diana's confidential correspondence. Princess Diana's private correspondence underwent rigorous examination with the royal family, allegedly exerting considerable effort to regulate the dissemination of information on her life. Palace officers allegedly intercepted phone calls, mail, and intimate chats, therefore maintaining ongoing surveillance over her. This degree of interference was not confined to her public engagements, but permeated the most private facets of her personal life. Friends, relatives, and even her most trusted advisors recognized that their discussions with her may be surveilled, complicating her ability to fully trust anybody. The awareness that her statements may be eavesdropped or documented fostered a climate of paranoia, further alienating her from any avenues of assistance. The ramifications of this spying were significant. By eavesdropping on her conversations, the royal family may inhibit her from establishing relationships or soliciting counsel that could undermine their rule. Any effort she undertook to articulate her concerns or investigate alternatives outside the royal framework was likely to be identified and resolved before it gained momentum. This oversight of her personal life guaranteed her reliance on palace-sanctioned information sources, so consolidating their influence over her choices. The violation of her seclusion imposed a considerable psychological burden, leading her to perceive a lack of genuine sanctuary from the demands of royal life. The constant surveillance of her conversations underscored her perpetual lack of freedom, exacerbating the feeling of powerlessness that characterized much of her post-divorce life. This monitoring not only suppressed Princess Diana's capacity for free expression, but also furthered the monarchy's overarching policy of control. By closely monitoring her contacts, they guaranteed her continued subjugation to their control, inhibiting her ability to express independence or evade the limitations imposed by royal expectations. Psychological manipulation and domination. In addition to the physical and financial limitations imposed on Princess Diana, the royal family allegedly used psychological manipulation as a primary strategy to regulate her conduct and preserve their dominance over her existence. This kind of control was more covert, functioning subtly to influence her ideas, feelings, and self-esteem in ways that were challenging to identify and much more difficult to counteract. From the start of her marriage to Prince Charles, Diana endured emotional strain, often experiencing remorse, anxiety, and doubt over her own judgment. The persistent reinforcement of royal expectations and the insidious erosion of her confidence caused her to doubt her intuition, so complicating her ability to establish her independence. The psychological manipulation went beyond simple emotional coercion. It was a deliberate attempt to undermine her agency. Diana was consistently reminded that her duty was to maintain the monarchy's image, and any divergence from that expectation was greeted with censure or rejection. Her mental challenges, including her reported difficulties with depression and self-doubt, were often seen as personal shortcomings rather than valid issues requiring help. The royal family's unwillingness to provide her with sufficient mental health support intensified her inner turmoil, forcing her to confront her challenges in solitude. The incessant scrutiny and pressure to comply exacerbated her weakness, solidifying the notion that she was ill-suited to function outside the royal framework. This psychological manipulation significantly affected Princess Diana's mental health, exacerbating the emotional distress that characterized most of her existence. The incessant manipulation, coupled with the absence of genuine support, rendered it more challenging for her to liberate herself from the system that aimed to dictate and control her life. The psychological impact of these approaches was significant, influencing her challenges and eventually contributing to the terrible events that resulted in her premature death. Refusal of sufficient medical and psychological assistance. The royal family often minimized or disregarded Princess Diana's physical and mental health challenges, exacerbating their grip over her existence. Notwithstanding her extensively recorded struggles with depression, anxiety, and eating problems, the palace allegedly did not provide her with the essential medical and psychological assistance she urgently required. The monarchy placed its public image above providing a secure environment for her treatment, sometimes trivializing her mental pain as a personal shortcoming rather than a valid health issue. This absence of assistance not only intensified her challenges, but also solidified her feelings of solitude, further complicating her efforts to escape the burdens of royal life. The royal family's hesitance to confront Princess Diana's mental health concerns was most apparent in their reaction to her bulimia and self-injurious behavior. Diana candidly revealed in interviews and personal narratives that she used self-destructive practices as a means of dealing with the mental distress she experienced inside the monarchy. Instead of obtaining professional assistance, she often encountered silence or contemptuous attitudes from authority figures. The absence of sufficient care compelled her to conceal her difficulties, exacerbating her feelings of powerlessness and strengthening the notion that her welfare was subordinate to the institution's priorities. This widespread oversight resulted in catastrophic outcomes. Devoid of adequate mental health supports, Princess Diana was compelled to confront her emotional distress in isolation, heightening her susceptibility to manipulation and control. The royal family's inability to provide her necessary assistance not only exacerbated her persistent difficulties, but also influenced the unfortunate course of her life. The deprivation of sufficient medical and psychological treatment served as a further mechanism to maintain her dependence and subjugation, guaranteeing her continued subservience to the monarchy during her most vulnerable periods. Exerting monarchical power to suppress Princess Diana. The royal family's considerable influence extends beyond the confines of Buckingham Palace, permeating the upper tiers of British society and international organizations. This authority was used intentionally to maintain control over Princess Diana's voice, especially when she sought to convey her own narrative about her life and challenges. Whenever she attempted to articulate her views, be it in interviews, personal narratives, or public declarations, there were coordinated attempts to undermine her credibility and stifle her message. The monarchy's capacity to influence public opinion via its relationships with the media, political leaders, and powerful elites rendered Diana's assertion of independence practically insurmountable due to the inevitable opposition she encountered. A notable instance of this suppression occurred when Princess Diana had her renowned interview with BBC journalist Martin Bashir in 1995. The disclosures she made on her marriage to Prince Charles, the emotional trauma she suffered, and the isolation she experienced inside the royal family reverberated globally. Instead of allowing her statements to remain unrefuted, the monarchy and its affiliates promptly moved to undermine the interview. Authorities scrutinized the validity of the techniques used to get the interview, while devoted members of the aristocracy and media personalities attempted to minimize or refute her assertions. The repercussions of the interview were substantial, affecting both Princess Diana and the monarchy, which faced examination of its meticulously preserved image of stability and decorum. In addition to the media, the royal family used their power to restrict Princess Diana's capacity to express herself via other means. She was often dissuaded from making public remarks that diverged from the official narrative, and when she did, she encountered prompt repercussions. The monarchy's influence guaranteed that every platform she sought to use was either constrained or distorted to align with their objectives. This unyielding endeavor to suppress her was indicative of the apprehension she provoked in those attempting to maintain the royal family's dominance. Limiting Princess Diana's philanthropic endeavors. Princess Diana's humanitarian efforts were a crucial element of her post-divorce existence. Nonetheless, the royal family attempted to impose limitations even in this domain. The monarchy meticulously regulated the extent of her charity activities, enabling her to endorse numerous causes while maintaining control over her public persona. The royal family recognized the potency of her influence and sought to confine her activities within parameters that fit with their objectives. Consequently, Princess Diana was often steered towards causes seen as safe and non-controversial, while more politically sensitive matters were either discouraged or explicitly prohibited. A prominent instance of this control was the monarchy's measured response to Princess Diana's engagement in landmine awareness initiatives. Although she was allowed to advocate for the cause, the palace allegedly advised her to refrain from explicitly criticizing governments or military entities, notwithstanding her firm personal beliefs. Likewise, her engagement with HIV and AIDS sufferers, while highly commended, was meticulously orchestrated to avoid any discourse that may undermine the monarchy's conventional image. The royal family ensured her philanthropic endeavors aligned with their public relations plan, enabling her to preserve a humanitarian image while restricting her political expression. These limitations exasperated Princess Diana, who was profoundly committed to effecting meaningful change via her endeavors. She often articulated a want to participate in initiatives that directly confronted global injustices, but the monarchy's authority constrained her capacity to do so unimpeded. The conflict between her humanitarian principles and the palace's aim to keep a regulated public persona highlighted the overarching quest for autonomy that characterized most of her existence. Notwithstanding these restraints, Princess Diana remained devoted to her philanthropic endeavors, using her position to raise awareness in manners that transcended the boundaries put upon her. The psychological impact of continuous monitoring. The incessant scrutiny faced by Princess Diana significantly affected her psychological state, influencing her mental and emotional health in both immediate and enduring ways. Upon her accession to the royal family, she was always under scrutiny. Her every activity, dialogue, and engagement was observed whether by security agents, palace authorities, or the press. This incessant surveillance fostered an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust, making it practically unfeasible for her to feel secure or in command of her own existence. The awareness that her activities were always observed and evaluated instilled a profound feeling of dread, supporting the notion that she was never really liberated from the royal family's control. The psychological ramifications of this monitoring were apparent in her personal conduct and emotional difficulties. Princess Diana often articulated her feelings of entrapment, detailing how the incessant scrutiny impacted her self-perception. The absence of privacy prevented her from truly relaxing or being herself, since every blunder or emotional outburst might be weaponized against her. The constant attention intensified her pre-existing mental health issues, such as sadness, anxiety, and self-doubt. The inability to evade the scrutiny of the monarchy and the media left her isolated and vulnerable, exacerbating her feelings of powerlessness. Furthermore, the monitoring engendered a loop of self-censorship, compelling Princess Diana to constantly reevaluate her words and actions. This not only suppressed her capacity for self-expression, but also solidified the royal family's dominance over her story. The psychological burden of this incessant scrutiny was substantial, exacerbating the mental distress that characterized most of her existence and eventually influencing the terrible events that resulted in her premature death. Limiting access to her offspring. The royal family's premeditated approach of deliberately restricting Princess Diana's access to her children, William and Harry, was one of the most cruel methods of control used against her. Princess Diana, a dedicated mother, valued her bond with her boys. Yet the monarchy consistently imposed obstacles using her maternal impulses for emotional manipulation. From the outset of her childhood, the royal family prescribed the parameters of her contacts with William and Harry, so preventing her from truly engaging in their lives. This control went beyond simple scheduling. It was a systematic endeavor to alienate her from her children, so perpetuating the notion that she lacked complete authority over her household. Subsequent to her divorce from Prince Charles in 1996, Princess Diana's access to her boys was increasingly restricted. Reports indicate that she often faced denial of unannounced visits and had to seek authorization for even the most fundamental contacts with her children. The palace meticulously regulated her access, restricting the duration of her interactions and stipulating the conditions for her meetings with them. This limitation was especially troubling for Princess Diana, who saw her maternal duty as one of her paramount duties. The emotional burden of being apart from William and Harry was substantial, rendering her helpless and further alienated. The royal family's regulation of her access to her children had a twofold effect. It undermined her emotional stability, while consolidating their dominance over her existence. By compelling her to vie for time with William and Harry, They guaranteed her continued reliance on their validation, so reinforcing the power dynamic that dictated her life. The ongoing challenge of sustaining a significant connection with her boys exacerbated her feelings of powerlessness, further hindering her ability to establish her independence. The prolonged consequences of emotional manipulation. The emotional manipulation experienced by Princess Diana had enduring effects, influencing her psychological health and strengthening the royal family's dominance over her existence. From the beginning of her marriage to Prince Charles, she endured psychological strategies aimed at undermining her confidence and fostering compliance. These strategies included gaslighting when her worries were disregarded or reinterpreted as illogical, and guilt-tripping, which instilled a sense of responsibility for the dysfunction within the royal family. The aggregate impact of these manipulations was significant, rendering her more susceptible to self-doubt and mental turmoil. A significant detrimental component of this psychological manipulation was its capacity to alienate Princess Diana from her own feelings. The persistent invalidation of her emotions caused her to doubt her senses, hindering her ability to trust her intuition. This internal struggle is expressed via worry, sadness, and a continual sense of powerlessness. The royal family's unwillingness to recognize or assist her emotional difficulties further intensified these problems, compelling her to manage in solitude. In the absence of a secure environment to articulate her anguish, she often resorted to self-destructive actions, including self-harm and disordered eating, in an attempt to reclaim a semblance of control over her existence. The psychological impact of this manipulation went beyond her anguish. It also influenced the public narrative of her. The royal family and its associates used her emotional difficulties to depict her as unstable, so cementing the notion that she required regulation. This depiction not only undermined her credibility, but also guaranteed that her attempts to demonstrate her independence were viewed with doubt. The enduring consequences of this emotional manipulation were catastrophic, influencing the unfortunate course of her life and eventually leading to her premature demise. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now.